so much of how we do change has changed. And I really love what we're able to do now in totally virtual or even hybrid environments. But it means that as change managers, we're going to have to level up on some skills and maybe let a few assumptions that we've had for a long time go. So, in the next 2 episodes, I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I've learned and some really cool ways that you can level up your change approach and the way you're doing change management in virtual and hybrid environments. I'm Natalia Loback, and this is the Change Course podcast. I've spent my career leading complex change and transformation in organizations. And over my career, I've discovered what makes complex transformational change stick. Connected change is all about leading successful change within the context of the organization. And here at the Change Course podcast, we're all about making change sustainable. So listen in, drop us a like, a comment, and let us know how we can help you connect and change. When I started doing change management many, many years ago, and okay, I'm not going to give it a number. I think I have in some previous episodes to say just how long I've been at this game and how much I love it. But things have really changed, and I think for the better. Certainly, I was always looking for ways to engage people, to find ways to get people excited about change, interesting ways to share content with them, get responses, reactions, understand what people were thinking and feeling so that we could really address those systemic causes of resistance. We could address the concerns of the stakeholders. We could co-create and build change together. I was always looking for innovation and better ways to do this. In the previous world, so much of what change was about was in person, real time, in real life, or IRL, if we want to use cool abbreviations, interaction. So we would plan facilitations, workshops, meetings. Change was all about people in the same room together, looking each other in the eye, using sticky notes, planning things out. And my role as the change manager was a lot of one-on-one facilitation, negotiation, capacity building, coaching, and then also that other work of developing the resources, developing all of the collateral that we needed, the plans, communications, writing, planning, executing, all of that stuff, right? That's kind of what the work looked like. So big decisions, big facilitations, people in a room together with tangible, tactile tools that they were using to plan things out or hash out problems or work through things. And then a lot of FaceTime with me and sponsors or me and very key stakeholders. And then, a lot of sort of one-on-one stuff that I did to build out all the support pieces that then went into actually executing the change. Now things look totally different. And what's really interesting is that with the virtual and hybrid environment, those of us who got sort of stuck in our old ways of doing things very manually or very analog, as I would say, so relying on big group facilitations, relying on face-to-face in-person time to get things done, that doesn't really happen anymore. But it happens differently. Things look different. The way people work is different. The way people collaborate and interact has really changed. So, how do we take this new world and accelerate through some of those major changes? Okay, I also spent time working at global companies, and global companies they have to operate in some kind of a virtual world. If you needed to have a meeting with somebody who lived across the continent with you, and you had to do that in person all the time, it would never work, right? I mean, it's impossible to think that we would have to get on a plane and go somewhere to meet with somebody. So global companies were kind of, I would say, on the leading edge of some of this stuff about 5 to 6 years ago. But now with the change in the way that we work, almost everyone has joined this revolution. And it's not going away. It's not changing. It's not going back. So one of the main things that I talk about is facilitation. And if you're stuck in the old way, you're probably having trouble adjusting to this new world. If you are in the virtual hybrid working environment today and you're asked to step up and lead a change, here's what you need to know about how we need to do things now. So I'll take facilitation as one of the first things that I'm going to break down. And I wrote an article on this. I'll link it in the show notes. You can see all of this cool, I broke it down into 5 different things, but I'm going to get a little deeper into facilitation in this one. So when you are bringing people together, you need to think about things in 2 streams now. There is work that happens synchronously, which is everybody together in the same place. Now, that place is now a virtual place, but everyone together at the same time in a place or time, right? So place and time dependent work. You also have the second stream, which is asynchronous work. Asynchronous work can be done by people on their own time. So when you're designing facilitations now, you have to think about breaking it down into the asynchronous work that is done by the people who are coming to the facilitation in that time and in that place before it happens. So what is the pre-work that needs to happen and how are you designing that? What is happening in that very time-boxed facilitation time that is going to be happening virtually? And then what happens afterwards asynchronously? What is the work that can continue when people are able to do things by themselves on their own time through a virtual platform? Now remember, all of this is virtual. So we're no longer going into a room and putting sticky notes up on a wall when we have feedback. It's not about this war room mentality that we used to have. That just doesn't work anymore. So what we need to create, first of all, is that virtual space where we are bringing the team together and where we are collaborating. And we need to get really clear on what the purpose is, what the duration is, who the team members are, and what they're there for. And yes, we did some of that work before, but now it is changing. So this is a little bit different. And the way that you may have to think about this is who is contributing, but who can also see the results of that contribution. So thinking as well to maybe how we ran fairly public or inclusive facilitations where we wanted others to be able to see the results of that work. Now you have to be more intentional about that. You can't just rely on people being quote unquote in the office to see the results of that. You can't rely on that anymore. You actually have to be intentional about how you're sharing the results, who you're sharing them with, the platform, and the method by which you share that. It all becomes part of your communications approach. So visibility is another piece you need to be thinking about. So as I mentioned, what's happening asynchronously, what's happening synchronously, who's on your team, what is the virtual space that you're using, how are you designing that space, how are you designing those interactions, who is involved and why, and then how are you sharing the results of that work with others? And what is the purpose of sharing that work with others? I think that there is a really important thing here that we used to do implicitly, but we weren't explicit about. And that is when we are involving stakeholders. When we are involving stakeholders, we relied a lot in the past on people seeing the stakeholders being involved. That is, they would see that the stakeholders were all in a room together working on the change. They would see it because they walked by. They would see it because they were in the office together. We can't rely on that anymore. That doesn't work. So what we need to do is actually roll that into what we're talking about with change. So this is really important for the sponsor to understand what their role is in talking about how we are involving stakeholders and what we are doing. And also as part of that communication strategy, you want the people in the organization to understand who those stakeholders are and how they are being involved. And if they have questions and they have feedback, how they can also engage with the process. That needs to be explicitly stated, and we need to be more prescriptive and telling more stories about the work that we're doing that's in progress, because things are a bit more invisible and cloistered in a virtual environment. So you don't have this ability to see what other people are working on. Some of that privacy, some of that gatekeeping is built into these virtual tools, which is okay. That's actually a good thing for a lot of work that happens in organizations, that your teams are fairly discreet and contained. It actually helps the collaboration, but it doesn't help when you're looking at mobilizing an organization through change. So you've got to be really crisp and clear on what you're doing and why, and you have to be able to communicate that as well and be really clear about who's involved, why they're involved, what they're doing, and how somebody outside of that circle can either be included or become engaged. So really, really important to be thinking about something I've talked a lot about when I talk about in-groups and out-groups. When we're managing change, we want to be very conscious and conscientious about who we're including and why. And we also want to be very careful about exclusion. Because the best momentum and the best engagement comes from when we are including people, we want to give people opportunities, as many opportunities as possible, to become included. We need to acknowledge that the virtual environment by nature can be exclusive. And so how can we manage and create this environment of inclusivity? All right, so that's my 2 cents. I mean, it's a long 2 cents on how we need to be thinking about virtual facilitation as change managers going forward. And I think it's a really exciting world, and there's some incredible opportunities in how we can do this really effectively and get more engagement, get more people interested and engaged with what is happening. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about how I've actually done this and the tools that I've used and the results that I got, so that maybe you can get some ideas, learn from it. And I'd love to actually hear from you about some of the tools or approaches that you've used to engage and to facilitate in this virtual and hybrid world. So stay tuned for next week's episode, where I get a little deeper into the tools and we'll break apart a little bit more about facilitation and now how that works today in this incredibly brave new world of virtual and hybrid change management. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, I invite you to like, share, rate, and subscribe, because it helps others find us. Change Course is brought to you by Charthouse Advisory Services and ConnectedChange.com. Our music is Levity by Emily Clausen. Show notes have moved. We're now at connectedchange.com. So visit us there under the Change Course podcast page, and you'll find a list of all the resources that I've mentioned here today. While you're visiting us, sign up for the Change Navigator newsletter. You'll keep on top of all things change, and every month we are sharing exclusive content and resources only with our subscribers. So don't miss out. Sign up at connectedchange.com. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to change course.